Hi everyone, and welcome to another session of Building Blocks. I'm Judy Brown from the Little Fabric Garden, and we're going to take you one step further in our quilt, the strip quilt that we've been working on. So here in front of me, you see the strip quilt. The top is completely finished. We've got the middle section, we put the inside border, and we have the outside border, which we call piano keys. All right, so now the next step is to get all of this together so that you can put it on your bed or wrap up with it on the sofa or whatever. So when you do that, you have to sandwich it. When you have a quilt, there are three different layers. There's the top, then there is the batting that goes in the middle, and then you have the backing, which when you flip the quilt over is what you have, what you see. So here we have all three layers, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but at the end of the table, I put tape. This is the backing, and I tape the backing down because I didn't want to get any wrinkles in it, or try not to get any wrinkles in it, I should say, because this is the first layer you put down, and then you have to put the batting, which is the middle section, and that's kind of fluffy, feels kind of like a flannel. And so when you're trying to put that down, it sticks to everything else. So if you don't tape the backing down, then you have a hard time putting the batting down. And then you just lay the top on top of the other two layers. And so we're going to sandwich it, just like we have a regular sandwich. We're going to sandwich our quilt. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. When you come to quilting, you can quilt it yourself. You can take it to a Longarm quilter. If you're going to quilt it yourself, then you have to put the three layers together, and you have to hook them together somehow and make sure that they are together so they don't move when you are trying to quilt them. So today I'm just going to show you three of the different ways that you can do that. I'm not really going to sandwich them because I don't want to put them together right at this moment, and you'll see why later. But anyway, there's three different ways that you can do it. One of the ways is by using like a spray, a basting spray, and that's what it's called, basting spray. And what you do with that is you take the layers and you fold it, like this would be folded all the way over, and you would take your spray, which I am not going to do, and you would spray it on here, and then you would take it and you would put the top back over the batting, and then smooth it out, and it would stay. And the basting spray is really nice if you have small things. Doing a big quilt, even this size quilt, gets to be kind of laborious because you have to put it in a spot where you can like fold it back and then spray it and move it back. But it does stick, So you do that side, then you would come over and you would do the same thing to this side. And after you get the top onto the batting, then you would flip the whole thing and you would do the same thing to the back. So you can use the basting spray, and like I said, the basting spray works a whole lot better if you're doing small things like placemats or table runners or even small wall hangings. But when you come to doing a big quilt, it might not be the method that you want to use. Okay, the next one is basting with a needle and thread. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, this is my least favorite. It takes a while to do, but it does secure it, and that's all that's important. So when you do that, there's a really long needle. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a really long needle, and it's called a basting needle. And you thread it with a color thread, or this is what I was told years ago, that is completely different from what you have on your quilt, so that you can see it, and then when you're all done basting it, after you get it done quilting, then you can go back and you can snip your basting thread, and you don't have to worry about leaving it in here. And whenever you start doing these basting or sandwiching, you always try to start in the middle, and then you work your way back, because you start in the middle, like the middle of this, and we would like dig it in and then bring it back up. Big stitches. You don't have to have little tiny stitches. They're big stitches because you're just trying to hold it together. And you do it going all the way across, and then you leave about 6 inches, and then you do the next. But when you do them, then you can keep smoothing it out as you're going along to make sure that you're getting the wrinkles, and it's going to be smooth, so that when you go to quilt it, you're not going to end up with a big pleat in it because you had too much fabric. So this is the basting way, and there are a lot of people that do this way. I just it's just my least favorite. I think it works very, very well, and it would be a good one to use, and I have used it, but it's just not my favorite. So what I usually use is I usually pin mine when I'm going to sandwich it. Now, this can be hazardous to your body. You just have to be very, very careful when you go to quilt it after you put all these pins in it. But I seem to like it better. It seems to go faster for me, and maybe that's the reason, because it doesn't take quite as much time for me. And so when you do it, you try to get the pins, and they usually have like the yellow ball on the back, but they're long. So just like the needle, when you had a long needle to dig in there to pull up, the same thing with this. And I always start in the middle, and just stick it in, pull it back up, and then I spread it out, and about every 6 to 8 inches, I do the same thing. All right, so then after you get the quilt all sandwiched, and you do that, like you've got to come all the way down here, and then you pull it, and you make sure everything is straight and smooth, and you do the same thing there. And that's with any of the techniques that I've showed you so far. So after you get it sandwiched, then you can decide how you're going to quilt it. Now, a lot of the gals, when they're quilting them themselves, they'll do what we call stitching in the ditch. And stitching in the ditch is just going in the seam, where the seam is. So they may go, start in the middle. Again, you start in the middle, and you would like stitch all the way down that seam. Then you'd come over here to stitch here, and you would do the same. And that's called stitching in the ditch. And with this one, I think you would probably need to do something else. So you may have to stitch in the ditch going there also, to make sure that when you go to wash it, it's not pulling apart. That's what you have to. That's why you have to tack it down and make sure probably every 6 inches anyway, hold it down. So the 3 different ways that you can sandwich your quilt. You can use the basting spray, okay? And there are a lot of different brands of this. This is one that I just started getting into the store years ago, and I've never tried any of the other ones. I know there are some other ones, and I know that people like them just as well. So there's that, and then it's the needle and thread basting, and like some people put a knot at the end when they're doing it. I usually do. Because I'd hate to do it twice, since I don't like to do it in the first place, So anyway, but you don't have to. And usually, you've got the big long threads, and I double mine when I do that, and I think most people do when they're doing it that way. And then the last one is, of course, the pins. And I had a gal that was going to quilt one that I did. I had sandwiched it quite a while ago, and I just never got to it to get it quilted. And so I asked her if she would do it for me, and she said yes. Well, she didn't realize that I had all these pins in it, sandwiching it, and when she brought it back, she said, "Don't ever give me another one like that." I had little poke marks all over my body. So that's the thing you have to remember. If you're going to use the pins, you will get poked quite a bit. So these are the 3 ways that I have used, and I've told you about. And there is one more that we will be showing you in a little while. And if you don't like doing all of those sandwiching things that I showed you the last time we were together, then you can do what I like to do. I like to take all of the pieces, the top, the batting, and the backing, and take it to my friend Barb Haas, who is a Longarm quilter. And so she is going to show you that step and putting it on her Longarm quilting machine. So this is Barb Haas, and she will take it from here.
Hello. I wanted to first just go over quickly what my Longarm machine is. So we have the quilt head down here that we'll get to in a minute, and then this long table, and I happen to have a 14-foot table which allows me to do up to a king-size quilt. And the basic parts of them, besides the sewing machine, are these 4 rails. And when we put a quilt on, this rail is just a stabilizer, and this rail in the back has this leader on it, and it allows me, it's called the take-up roller, and it allows me to pin the quilt backing onto that, and then as I pin the other end of the quilt backing onto this rail in the front, and I pull it tight between the two. The take-up rail will ultimately end up with the quilt on it when we're finished. This other rail is my quilt rail, and this is where we're going to put the actual quilt top. So I have Judy's quilt top right here. And the key to putting on a quilt is to get it on as square as possible. So the squarer you quilt it, the squarer I can get it on my machine. That's how that works. I can't make something square that's not. So I'm going to put it on. I know my leader that I'm pinning it onto is square. So if I can get it square on this edge, I'm going to pin it on, and then I'm going to roll it up onto that roller. Let me grab some pins. And I'll pin it on, starting in the middle and working out both directions. Alright, so we have the quilt pinned on to the quilt roller leader, and I'm going to roll that back. And then I'm going to roll this up onto this roll bar. And the key here is I want to keep the edges very square. So as I roll them up, I'm going to look, I'm going to pull this over so it's nice and square. Make sure this edge is square. I roll about 3 times, and then I check and move the fabric over if needed. All right. And once we get it down past the leader, past the pins where the backing material is, the next thing I'm going to do is put the batting in and complete the quilt sandwich. Biggest thing for me is always figuring out the correct size of the batting. All right, I got it right the first time. Longarm quilters out there watching this, I know this isn't necessarily how everybody does it, but this is how I do it. I've tried putting the batting in first, and then by the time I get the quilt top rolled up, it's all crumpled up. So I just do it this way because it works for me. And I'm just attaching it to my clamps on the side so that when the back rolls up, the batting rolls with it. Just down a bit. All right. So at this point we have our quilt sandwich, but nothing's basted, everything's kind of floating around. So I'm going to tighten this up, clamps, everything's tight. And I'm going to bring my machine over, and I'm going to baste around the edge. My machine has channel locks, so once I lock it horizontally, it won't go, once I lock it vertically, it won't go horizontally. So I'm going to lock it. So get my thread pulled up, and that's just the click of the button. And then I can move forward and baste up the side and know that I'm perfectly square. I just need to bring the quilt over if needed. And then when I get here to the top, I click to the horizontal lock, so I can only go horizontally. And I'll work my way across and then down the other side. Now I'm sure if you're looking, you can see that there's puckers in here, but we're going to take care of that right now. Now it's all squared up. Now it'll just come down this edge. Now we're ready to quilt. Just gonna check my bobbin real quick. Some people are surprised to see that even though it's a really huge machine, it's the same size bobbin as in our regular domestic machines. Okay, so on my computer I've called up a pattern that we're gonna do on this quilt, but I need to tell the computer where the quilt is because I have 14 feet of table. It could be anywhere in the table. So it's asking me to touch a reference point on the screen. So I'm going to touch right in the upper left corner and click OK, and then it says move the needle to that point. So I'm going to move the needle right up here. I'm going to be a little bit outside just to give me some wiggle room. And click OK. Now it knows where it is. And I'm going to say sew quilt. Sew quilt. It's going to move to the start point. If I had an instruction, because I forgot to put the brace in. So this is why a longarm quilter asks for extra material to clamp on to, because if we don't have that 4 inches, we wouldn't be able to get clear to the edge because the machine would run into your clamps. So, okay, let me do that again. Restart. We're going to go to restart position, which is right here. Go back. Sorry. So quick. Continue, and I'm going to click. I'm going to check, make sure my speed is correct. Hit start. Now, even though I basted the edges down, I still want to kind of watch when it's at the edges to make sure that it doesn't catch the edge on the presser foot and pull it up. So until it really gets going, I kind of stand here and watch it. Kind of sings to you why it quilts. It's not the quietest machine. You do get used to it. It's just going to continue to quilt the whole way across. So I've paused the machine. It will take about 10 to 15 minutes to move across with this pattern, and then I would advance the quilt and do the next row until I get to the end. So that's how a long armor quilts a quilt. At this time, I'm going to pass it back to Judy.
Alright, so this is why I like this so much, because I don't have to do anything. I just bring it to Barb and then she puts it on the machine and she does it for me. So when this is finished, Barb will cut it around the edge, and then she will bring it back to me, and then I will put the binding on it. The binding takes a lot of explaining to do, and it's kind of hard to show. So if you decide you want to do this and follow along with what we've been doing, then when you get to the point to put the binding on, I would just tell you to bring it down to the store, and I can help you individually put the binding on and show you how to do that. So I hope that you've enjoyed, like beginning to end of this quilt, and I really hope that you've been, trying this at home. And if you did, please put pictures on the Facebook page. We would just absolutely love to see them. Thank you so much. All right, so as you can see, we are now done with the quilt. Barb finished quilting it, and I'm going to turn this over to the other side so you can see the beautiful job that she did on it. And she put these little circles and little circles around, and it is really cute. And it also, you can't see it so much on the front, but it kind of takes away from the strips because it's got a circular feel to it, so it kind of takes away from the strip look. So after I talked to Barb Haas, who did the quilting, we've decided that we are going to donate the quilt to the library, and then they are going to use it for whatever means that that they want. But we thought, since we went through the library doing this process, that it would be a good thing to donate it to the library. So I hope you've enjoyed it from beginning to end. And we're working on some other projects, trying to figure out what we're going to do next. So I hope you stay tuned and check us out. Thank you.